The Turkic Khaganate or Göktürk Khanate was a khanate established by the Ashina clan of the Gökturks in medieval Indonesia, under the leadership of Buman Khan and his sons. The Ashina succeeded the Rouran Khaganate as the main power in the Mongolian plateau and established a stronger empire, which rapidly expanded to rule huge territories in Central Asia. This Khaganate interacted extensively with various dynasties based in North China, and for significant periods exercised considerable control over the lucrative Silk Road trade. The first dynasty collapsed in 581, initiating a series of political conflicts and civil wars which fragmented the Khanate in eastern and western factions, which were eventually subjugated by the Tang dynasty. A century later, a second, renewed, Turkic Khaganate emerged in 682 and lasted until 744, when it was overthrown by the Uyghurs' first Khaganate. The origins of the Turk Khanate trace back to 546, when Buman Khan made a preemptive strike against the Uyghur and Tila groups planning a revolt against their overlords, the Rouran Khanate. For this service he expected to be rewarded with a Rouran princess, thus marrying into the royal family. However, the Rouran Khagan, Ujiula Agui, sent an emissary to Buman to rebuke him, saying, "You are my blacksmith slave. How dare you utter these words?" As Anagui's blacksmith slave comment was recorded in Chinese chronicles. Some claim that the Gökturks were indeed blacksmith servants for the Rouran elite, and that blacksmith slavery may have indicated a form of vassalage within Rouran society. According to Denis Sinor, this reference indicates that the Turks specialized in metallurgy, although it is unclear if they were miners or, indeed, blacksmiths. Whatever the case, that the Turks were slaves need not be taken literally, but probably represented a form of vassalage, or even unequal alliance. A disappointed Buman allied with the Western way against the Rouran, their common enemy. In 552, Buman defeated Inagui and his forces north of Huang. Having excelled both in battle and diplomacy, Buman declared himself Ilag Khagan of the new Khanate at Otukan, but died a year later. His son, Makan Khan, defeated the Hafthulite Empire, Khatan and Kyrgyz. Buman's brother Istami bore the title Yabgu of the West, and collaborated with the Sassanid Empire of Iran to defeat and destroy the Hafthalites, who were allies of the Rouran. This war tightened the Ashina clan's grip on the Silk Road. The appearance of the Pannonian Avars in the West been interpreted as a nomadic faction fleeing the westward expansion of the Gökturks, although the specifics are a matter of irreconcilable debate given the lack of clear sources and chronology. René Grousset links the Avars with the downfall of the Hephthalites rather than the Rouran, while Denis Sinor argues that Rouran Avar identification is repeated from article to article, from book to book with no shred of evidence to support it. Istami's policy of western expansion brought the Gökturks into Europe. In 576 the Gökturks crossed the Kerch Strait into the Crimea. 5 years later they laid siege to Chersonesus. The cavalry kept roaming the steppes of Crimea until 590. Much of Bactria remained of dependency of the Ashina until the end of the century. Civil War. The Turkic Khanate split in two after the death of the fourth ruler, Taspar Khan, California, 584. He had willed the title of Khagan to Makan's son Apa Khan, but the High Council appointed Ishbara Khan in his stead. Factions formed around both leaders. Before long, 4 rivals claimed the title. They were successfully played off against each other by Sui and Tang China. The most serious contender was the Western one, Istami's son Tardu, a violent and ambitious man who had already declared himself independent from the Khan after his father's death. He now seized the title and led an army east to claim the seat of imperial power, Otukan. In order to buttress his position, Ishbara of the Eastern Khaganate applied to Emperor Yang of Sui for protection. Tardu attacked Changar, the Sui capital, around 600, demanding Emperor Yang to end his interference in the civil war. In retaliation, Chinese diplomacy successfully incited a revolt of Tardu's Taila vassals, which led to the end of Tardu's reign in 603. Among the dissident tribes were the Uyghurs and Xuanzhua. Eastern Turkic Khaganate. The civil war left the empire divided into eastern and western parts. The eastern part, still ruled from Otukan, remained in the orbit of the Sui and retained the name Gokturk. The Shibi Khan and Ilig Khan attacked China at its weakest moment during the transition between the Sui and Tang. On September 11, 615, Shibi's army surrounded Emperor Yang of Sui at Janman. In 626, Ilig Khan took advantage of the Shandwu Gate incident and drove on to Changar. On September 23, 626, Ilig Khan and his iron cavalries reached the bank of the Wei River at the north of Bayan Bridge. On September 25, 626, Li Shimin and Ilig Khan formed an alliance by sacrificing a white horse on Bayan Bridge. Tang paid compensation and promised further tributes, so Ilig Khan ordered to withdraw their iron cavalries. This is known as the Alliance of the Wei River, or the Alliance of Bayan Kiao. All in all, 67 incursions on Chinese territories were recorded. Before mid-October 627, heavy snows on the Mongolian-Manchurian grassland covered the ground to a depth of several feet, preventing the nomads' livestock from grazing and causing a massive die-off among the animals. According to the New Book of Tang, in 628, Taizong mentioned that there has been a frost in midsummer. The sun had risen from same place for 5 days. The moon had had the same light level for 3 days. The field was filled with red atmosphere. Ilig Khan was brought down by a revolt of his Taila vassal tribes, allied with Emperor Taizong of Tang. This tribal alliance figures in Chinese records as the Huihe. On March 27, 630, a Tang army under the command of Li Jing defeated the Eastern Turkic Khaganate under the command of Ilig Khan at the Battle of Yinshan. Ilig Khan fled to Ishbar-Ashad, but on May 2, 630, Zhang Baozhang's army got advanced to Ishbar-Ashad's headquarters. Ilig Khan was taken prisoner and sent to Changar. The Eastern Turkic Khaganate collapsed and was incorporated into the Jimmy system of Tang. Emperor Taizong said, "It's enough for me to compensate my dishonor at Wei River." Western Turkic Khaganate. The Western Khagan Shegwa and Tong Yafu Khan constructed an alliance with the Byzantine Empire against the Sasanian Empire and succeeded in restoring the southern borders along the Tarim and Amu Darya rivers. Their capital was Suyabe in the Chu River Valley, about 6 kilometers southeast of modern Tokmok. In 627, Tung Yafu, assisted by the Khazars and Emperor Heraclius, launched a massive invasion of Transcaucasia which culminated in the taking of Derbent and Tbilisi. In April 630, Tung's deputy Borishad sent the Gokturk cavalry to invade Armenia, where his general Chorpan Tarkan succeeded in routing a large Persian force. Tung Yahu's murder in 630 forced the Gokturks to evacuate Transcaucasia. The Western Turkic Khaganate was modernized through an administrative reform of Ashina-Helu and came to be known as the Onq. The name refers to the 10 arrows that were granted by the Khagan to 5 leaders of its 2 constituent tribal confederations, Dulo and Nushibi, whose lands were divided by the Chui River. The division fostered the growth of separatist tendencies, and soon the old Great Bulgaria under the Dulo chieftain Kubrat seceded from the Khaganate. Tang campaigns against the Western Turks, against the Khaganate and the vassals, the oasis states of the Tarim Basin. The Tang campaign against Karakoja in 640 led to the retreat of the Western Turks, who were defeated during the Tang campaigns against Karasar in 644 and the Tang campaign against Kucha in 648, leading to the in 657 conquest of the Western Turks by the Tang general Su Dingfang. Emperor Taizong of Tang was proclaimed Khagan of the Gokturks. In 659, the Emperor of China could claim to rule the entire Silk Road as far as Iran. The Gokturks now carried Chinese titles and fought by their side in their wars. Their era, spanning from 659 to 681, was characterized by numerous independent rulers, divided, and engaged in constant petty wars. In the east, the Uyghurs defeated their one-time allies the Siya-Tardush, while in the west the Turkish emerged as successors to the ONOQ. Second Turkic Khaganate. Despite all the setbacks, Ashina Kutluk and his brother Qabahan Khan succeeded in re-establishing the Khanate. In 679 they revolted against the Tang dynasty Chinese domination and, over the following decades, steadily gained control of the steppes beyond the Great Wall of China. By 705, they had expanded as far south as Samarkand and threatened the Arab control of Transoxian. The Gokturks clashed with the Umayyad Caliphate in a series of battles, but the Arabs emerged as victors. Following the Ashina tradition, the power of the Second Khaganate was centered on Ottoman. This polity was described by historians as the joint enterprise of the Ashina clan and the Sogdians, with large numbers of Chinese bureaucrats being involved as well. The son of Iltarish Bilge was also a strong leader whose deeds were recorded in the Orkhon inscriptions. After his death in 734, the Second Turkic Khaganate declined. The Gokturks ultimately fell victim to a series of internal crises and renewed Chinese campaigns. When Kul Bilge Khan of the Uyghurs allied himself with the Karluks and Basmiles, the power of the Gokturks was very much on the wane. In 744, Kutluk seized Ottoman and beheaded the last Gokturk Khagan Osmish Khan, whose head was sent to the Tang dynasty's Chinese court. In the space of a few years, the Uyghurs gained mastery of Inner Asia and established the Uyghur Khaganate. Customs and culture. Political system. Peter B. Golden points out that there is the possibility that the Khagans of the Turkic Khaganate, the Ashina, were themselves originally an Indo-European speaking clan who later adopted Turkic, but inherited their original Indo-European titles. German Turkologist W.E. Charlip writes that many central terms are Iranian in origin. The Turkic temporary Khan from the Ashina clan were subordinate to a sovereign authority that was left in the hands of a council of tribal chiefs. Religion. The Khaganate received missionaries from the Buddhist religion, which were incorporated into Tengriism. After the fall of the Khaganate, many refugees settled in Central Asia, Middle East and Europe adopted the Islamic faith.